Okay, good morning, everyone. Sorry for being so late. Davening was longer than usual today because of Shavasa Batamas, and I apologize for not scheduling this class accordingly. Before we begin, I just want to mention how to the sponsors for today's learning. Want to mention that today's learning has been sponsored by Audrey Ragovin Maddens to commemorate the yard site of her sister Chana Rivka Bas Moshe, which is being observed today. And this week's learning has been sponsored by Shraga Nancy Green in memory of Shraga's grandfather Yeshua Arya Leib and Shmuel Nachum. And this week's learning has also been sponsored by Mr. Eric Jordan. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishna Ches. HaMitzvot lomar truma v'amar maser. This mission is going to discuss cases where you meant to say one thing and you said something else. And the mission is going to go through a number of different cases, examples of where a declaration affects a halachic change in something. So for instance, we've been discussing until now truma. The way you go ahead and you make truma is that you declare it as truma, you declare a portion truma, and then you separate and give it to the Kohen. And what you do is that you declare this is truma, or you declare this is meiser. Whatever it is that you're doing, the way it's done is done through a declaration, typically done through a declaration. Now, in this case, we have hamiskaven loimat truma. Somebody intended to say truma when he was separating this grain, v'amar meiser, and he slipped up and he said meiser. So he intended to separate this grain as truma, but he said maser. Now again, here through his declaration, he meant to designate truma. Instead, what happened was he said meiser. Maser v'amar truma, or let's say he meant to designate this portion of grain as meiser, and he said the word truma. Let's say a different example. When you're going and you're sanctifying something for the Beis HaMikdash, such as an animal for a sacrifice. So here too, the person, Oila v'amar shlamim, he meant to say that this animal should be for an Ola, which means a burnt offering, where the entire animal is burnt. Basically, the entire animal is burnt. V'amar shlamim. And instead, he said shlamim, which is a different type of sacrifice. Parts of it are burnt, parts of it aren't burnt, parts of it are eaten. So he meant to say Ola, he meant to designate, to sanctify this animal, again through his declaration, to be an Ola carbon, and he mistakenly said Shlamim. Shlamim v'amar Ola, or the other way around. He intended to say Shlamim, and he said Ola. Next case. Sheini nichnas labayis zeh v'amar lazeh. Here we're talking about a person makes an oath, a shvua. A shvua to, let's say, I will do something or I won't do something. In this example, he meant to say that he makes an oath, I swear that I will not enter this house, but instead he said that house. Okay? He meant to say, I'm not going to enter Reuven's house, and at the end he slipped up and said Shimon's house. Or he says, I'm not going to benefit from this one, and he said from that one. Now here, this is called an example. This is meant to be an example of what's called a neder. We have something called a shvua and a neder. They can do very similar things, but they work differently. Because when you make a shvua, what we translate as an oath, you are creating an obligation on yourself, either to do or to refrain from doing something. When you make a neder, which is a different wording, when you make your vow, we translate it as a vow, you're not talking about an action, you're talking about a thing. Which means in a case where you say that I make a vow that I will not benefit from this person or this thing, what you're doing is you're really creating a prohibition on this article or on this person's articles. So even though the wording here is I will not benefit, which is more like an action, what it really means is he makes a vow that I will not benefit from this person's property. Instead, you said a different person. In all these cases, loy amar klum. The Mishnah says in all these cases, he has said nothing, meaning what he says is completely ineffective. Achiu pivli b'shavin, until one has one's mouth and heart in sync with each other. That means that the Torah wants that a person should have in mind, should decide what they plan on doing, and then declare what they say should be in sync with what they're thinking. So even though in both cases you intended to make a declaration that will affect either through a carbon, through truma, meiser, your intention was to affect something, but the Torah wants you to have in mind exactly what you're trying to affect, and that's what you declare. And if you don't have that, your declaration is ineffective. It's true, let's say in the case of, I meant to say ola, I meant to say a carbon ola, I said shlamim, maybe it should be at least a carbon shlamim. The answer is no. Your declaration has to be in sync with your intention. Otherwise, declaration doesn't work. Now, there's a very interesting question that is asked, and that's the following. If we take a look at the case of either making a vow, the case of making a vow or making an oath. So if I think a vow or I think an oath, it doesn't work. You have to declare it. When it comes to truma, or even when it comes, I believe, or when it comes to, let's say, sanctifying, consecrating an animal as a sacrifice, you can do that in your mind. The actual consecration can happen in your mind. So the question is asked, if the actual consecration can happen in your mind. So I intended in my mind, I wanted, let's say, truma. So I said meiser. Okay, so I said meiser. My saying doesn't work, but my intention was to separate truma. I said meiser. My intention was to separate truma. So if we know that truma can be designated through intent, then why doesn't my intent work? Okay, my declaration didn't work. My declaration, let's say, doesn't override my intent. But why can't my intent work? So there's a couple of answers that are given. One answer is that the same way your declaration has to be in sync with your mind has to be in sync with your declaration. So it's true, without a declaration, your intent is enough. But once you make a declaration, they both have to be in sync. That's one answer. Another answer is, let's say, for instance, in the case of truma, right? In the case of truma, what would happen here is that, according to some, that that it's true, you're right. The point of the Mishnah is to say that what you said doesn't count, but what you think does count. Okay, so that's the opinion of Tosfos. Tosfos in the Gemara Erechin says you're right. It is truma, and the whole point of the Mishnah says to say your declaration is ineffective because it's not in sync with what your mind says. But what your mind decided to do, that's going to work. And others answer that it's true that intent alone can work to designate truma, to consecrate an animal. But in this case, you declare. That means I didn't want to do it with my mind. I wanted to do it with my mouth. At the end of the day, I was doing a declaration. The declaration I meant this, I was supposed to be a declaration of truma, and it came up being meiser. But my intention was always to make a declaration. If my intention was always to make a declaration, that means I want to affect truma with my declaration. When I want to affect my declaration with declaration, if I want to affect my truma with the declaration, that means that's how I want to do it, and not with my mind, and therefore the intent doesn't work. Okay, mitzvah kufav 106. Mitzvah sleisasher lechol achilas ben seir umayra. Commandment against eating an amount of food that's eaten by a ben seir umayra, a wayward and rebellious son. In Parshas Kiseitze, the Torah talks about a ben seir umayra. That means a young boy who has become trying to find the right word. He's become so addicted to his habits of food and drink that we're concerned that he has become so corrupted with his desires that he may come to kill someone in order to fulfill them. And therefore the Torah punishes this young boy. And there's a specific amount the Gemara says that when the Ben Seir Meir eats, and again, he's warned by his parents not to do it. He does it once. He's warned not to do it. Does it again. There's a certain large amount of meat and wine that he drinks, and now gives him the status of a Ben Seir Meir. I don't remember the exact amount, but it's a large amount. And we have here, very interestingly, a prohibition against eating that amount, which sounds like even if you're not a Ben Seir Meir, but don't eat that kind of amount. That kind of amount can lead to bad things. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, le'seichlu al hadam. Literally translated, it means do not eat over the blood. Upirish, the meaning of this is le'seichlu achila kazoi hamavir lidei shvichus damim. Do not eat the kind of eating that could possibly bring you to kill for it. V'zohi achilas ben seir umeira, and that is the eating of the ben seir umeira. Okay. Gam ze pasuk hu azhara shoylacha bebehema kedem shetzei nafsha. This prohibition also includes a warning not to eat from the flesh of an animal before it dies. That's what it means. Do not eat over the blood. While the life is still there, don't eat from it. So even though you shechted it, even though you slaughtered it, but you have to wait for the animal's soul to depart. Okay, I'm gonna take that back. That last line that I just said about the shechita. It means it's a warning against eating from an animal before it dies. It's also a warning not to eat before you daven. The Torah says, do not eat over blood. Means to say, don't eat before you have prayed for your blood, before you have prayed for your life needs. That's also included in this. As to whether the Chavetz Chaim means it's a Torah prohibition or not, I'm not sure. It's interesting. Usually he says b'divrei Sefer. He usually mentions the rabbinic law when he means that it's a rabbinic law. Doesn't mention that here. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Next mitzvah. Prohibition against planting two kinds of seeds in a field. The Torah says, do not plant your field of a mixture. That means a mixture of seeds. Do not plant a mixture of planting of seeds. Now, we will see what this exactly includes. But Chavetz Chaim continues, if let's say it's outside of Eretz Yisrael, mutter li Yisrael lachatchil lezroi kilei zroyim. It's permitted for a Jew to go ahead and to plant a mixture of seeds. The kilei ilanos, but a mixture of trees, pirish meaning, v'harkev ilan esrog b'tapuach, to graft a esrog tree onto a apple tree. Okay. The kayetze bazeh, or any other similar type of grafting between two species, two different types of fruits, of trees. That's forbidden also outside of the land of Israel. One is not allowed to graft a tree onto a vegetable onto a tree, whatever that case would exactly be. That is forbidden even in chutz la'aretz. Now, whether we're talking about a mixture of seeds or a mixture of trees, although he made the mixture and he transgresses for doing so, nonetheless, what is produced from this mixture is permitted to eat, even for the person who committed this prohibition. The kilei hakerem, however, if we're talking about the mixture of a vineyard, the hainu l'zreya tavua b'kerem, which would mean to plant grain in a vineyard, like to plant wheat in a vineyard, asal Israel, it's forbidden to plant it. Ubachila bahana, and one is forbidden to eat from it or benefit from it. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's a rabbinic law. Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, asar min haTorah, it is forbidden from the Torah. So once we get into the mixture of the grain and the vineyard, like the wheat or the barley and such in the vineyard, that prohibition goes as far as it is prohibited to do and prohibited to eat or to have any kind of benefit from it. Have a wonderful day and a meaningful Shiva Sabbath Thomas.